The crimson sunset painted the Nebraska sky as Felicity Morgan clutched her shawl tightly around her shoulders. The county fair was emptying rapidly, leaving her standing alone beside the lemonade stand. The year was 1878, and Fairhaven's annual summer festival had been the talk of the territory for weeks. Now, as lanterns flickered to life in the growing darkness, she found herself abandoned, her brother nowhere to be found. Felicity had specifically told Thomas to meet her here at sundown. Their wagon was parked nearly 2 miles outside of town, and she wasn't keen on making that journey alone, especially with the considerable earnings from their family's quilt stall tucked safely in her reticule. "You look like you're waiting for someone who ain't coming," a deep voice observed. Felicity turned to find a tall man watching her, his Stetson tipped back to reveal eyes the color of burnished copper. His weathered face spoke of days spent under the relentless prairie sun, but there was a gentleness to his expression that stood at odds with the intimidating breadth of his shoulders. "My brother," she replied stiffly, maintaining proper distance. "He appears to have forgotten our arrangement." The stranger nodded, scanning the nearly deserted fairgrounds. "Need someone to walk you home?" he asked simply. Felicity hesitated. Her mother had raised her to be wary of strange men, but there was something trustworthy about this one. Perhaps it was the honest set of his jaw or the respectful distance he maintained. "I'm Owen Hayes," he added, seeming to sense her uncertainty. "Just finished driving cattle up from Texas. I'm no threat to you, miss, just offering assistance to a lady in need." "Felicity Morgan," she replied after a moment's consideration. "And I'm not heading home just yet. Our wagon is parked by Willow Creek." Owen nodded. "That's a fair piece to walk alone after dark. I'd be happy to escort you, Miss Morgan." The propriety of accepting his offer warred with practicality. Night was falling fast, and the thought of navigating the prairie paths alone was increasingly unappealing. "Very well, Mr. Hayes," she finally agreed. "I would appreciate your escort." They began walking toward the edge of town, an appropriate distance between them. Felicity found herself stealing glances at her companion. His gait was easy, confident without being cocky. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and the revolver at his hip appeared well-maintained but not flashy like those of the gunslingers who occasionally pass through town. "First time at the Fairhaven Festival?" Owen asked, breaking the silence. "No, my family has attended for years. We sell quilts, my mother's work primarily. They're quite sought after in these parts." "I can imagine," Owen replied. "Fine needlework is a blessing on cold prairie nights." The simple observation surprised her. Most men took little notice of domestic crafts. "Are you familiar with quilting, Mr. Hayes?" A smile tugged at his lips. "My grandmother was known for her stitching in our part of Texas. She claimed you could tell a person's character by how they pieced a quilt: patience, attention to detail, creativity." He glanced at her. "What does your quilting say about you, Miss Morgan?" The question caught her off guard. I prefer symmetrical patterns, order amid chaos, I suppose." Owen nodded as if her answer had confirmed something. "Seems fitting." As they walked beyond the town limits, the sounds of the fair faded, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of prairie grass. The moon rose, nearly full, illuminating their path. "May I ask what brings a Texas cowboy to Nebraska?" Felicity ventured. "Cattle drive," Owen replied. "Bringing a herd up to the railroad at Ogallala. My boss gave us 3 days leave before the journey back. Most of the boys headed straight for the saloons." He shrugged. "I preferred to see the fair." "You don't drink?" The question slipped out before propriety could stop it. Owen chuckled. "I've been known to take a whiskey now and then, but I've seen what happens when men make it their main pursuit." Besides, fairs remind me of home. My mother loved them, the music, the competitions, the sense of community. Spoke of her in the past, Felicity noted softly. I'm sorry. Been gone 5 years now. Fever took her. His voice remained steady, but Felicity detected the underlying current of grief. My father passed 3 years ago, she offered. Farming accident. They shared a moment of understanding before Owen spoke again. Your brother, is he older or younger? Younger by 2 years, though he often forgets his responsibility to his family, Felicity replied, irritation creeping back into her voice. He's likely at the card tables by now, despite Mother's explicit instructions. Young men can be foolish, Owen acknowledged. I certainly was at his age. And now you're the picture of wisdom at what, 25? 27, he corrected with a smile. And far from wise, just experienced enough to recognize my own foolishness before it costs me too dearly. A coyote howled in the distance, and Felicity unconsciously moved closer to Owen. He pretended not to notice, maintaining their pace without comment. How much further to your wagon? He asked. Just beyond that rise, Felicity pointed ahead, by the cluster of cottonwoods. As they crested the small hill, Felicity's heart sank. The wagon was there, but Thomas was not. Neither were the horses that should have been tethered nearby. Something's wrong, she murmured, quickening her pace. Owen's hand moved instinctively to his revolver. Stay behind me, he instructed quietly. They approached cautiously. The wagon appeared undisturbed, but the absence of the horses was alarming. Thomas, Felicity called out, her voice tight with worry. Thomas, are you here? Only silence answered. Owen circled the wagon, his eyes scanning the ground. There are multiple tracks here, he observed. Your brothers, I'm guessing, and at least 2 others. A cold dread settled in Felicity's stomach. Do you think? I think your brother may have encountered some trouble, Owen replied grimly. The tracks lead back toward town, but not by the main road. Felicity clutched her reticule tighter. The money from our sales is with me. If someone wanted to rob us, they'd have expected it to be with the wagon, Owen finished her thought. Your brother may have been followed when he came to get the horses. Felicity felt her chest tighten. Thomas was only 19, impulsive and sometimes irresponsible, but he was her brother. We have to find him, Owen nodded. We will. But first, let's secure your earnings. Do you have a hiding place in the wagon? Felicity climbed into the wagon bed and lifted a false bottom in one of the storage compartments. She placed her reticule inside and covered it carefully. Smart design, Owen commented. Your father's work. Yes, Felicity replied, a fleeting smile crossing her face. He was always thinking of ways to protect us on the road. He taught you well. Owen offered his hand to help her down. Now, let's see if we can track your brother and those horses. Following the tracks by moonlight was challenging, but Owen moved with confidence, occasionally kneeling to study the ground. Felicity was impressed by his tracking skills. You've done this before, she observed. Tracking is essential on cattle drives, he explained. Strays, predators, sometimes rustlers, you learn to read the land. The tracks led them toward a dilapidated barn on the outskirts of town, well away from the festival lights and sounds. As they drew closer, they heard voices, male, argumentative, with an occasional third voice that Felicity immediately recognized. Thomas, she whispered. Owen put a finger to his lips and guided her to a position behind some bushes. Through gaps in the barn's weathered boards, they could see inside. Thomas was tied to a post, his face bruised but defiant. 2 rough-looking men were arguing while the Morgan family's horses stood nervously in the corner. I'm telling you, she has the money, Thomas insisted. My sister handles all the earnings. I just came for the horses to bring her back. And I'm telling you, we've wasted enough time, the taller of the two men growled. "We'll take the horses and whatever's in your pockets, boy." "Let me talk to them," Felicity whispered urgently. "I can offer them the money in exchange for Thomas and the horses." Owen shook his head. "These aren't men who keep their word, Miss Morgan. They'd take the money and still leave you without brother or transportation if you were lucky." "Then, what do you suggest?" Owen assessed the situation carefully. "There are only two of them, and they don't seem particularly careful. I'm going to circle around to the back of the barn. When you hear me create a distraction, I want you to call out to your brother, let him know help is coming. Can you do that?" Felicity nodded, her heart pounding. "Good. Wait for my signal, then stay hidden until I call for you. Understood?" "Yes," she whispered. "Please be careful, Mr. Hayes." Owen's eyes met hers. "I promise." Then he slipped away into the darkness. Felicity waited, counting her heartbeats. Inside the barn, the argument continued, with Thomas receiving a backhanded slap when he attempted to reason with his captors. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Suddenly, there was a tremendous crash from the rear of the barn. Both captors whirled around, drawing their pistols. "Thomas!" Felicity called out. "We're here to help, Felicity." Her brother's voice was equal parts confused and relieved. One of the men started toward the sound of her voice, but before he could reach the barn door, Owen appeared in the open back entrance, his revolver drawn. "I suggest you gentlemen reconsider your evening plans," he said calmly. What followed happened so quickly that Felicity could barely follow the sequence. The taller man spun and fired, the shot going wild. Owen returned fire with precision, hitting the man's shoulder. The second captor tried to use Thomas as a shield, but Owen was already moving, tackling him before he could fully position himself. There was a brief, violent struggle before Owen subdued the second man with a powerful blow. The first was clutching his bleeding shoulder, his gun on the ground several feet away. "Felicity," Owen called. "It's safe now." She rushed into the barn and immediately went to Thomas, untying his bonds with trembling fingers. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked, examining his bruised face. "My pride more than anything," Thomas admitted sheepishly. "I'm sorry, Felicity. I thought I'd surprise you by bringing the wagon into town, but these fellows followed me from the card tent." "You were gambling again," she stated flatly. Thomas had the grace to look ashamed. "I won a fair amount." They must have seen. Owen had used the captor's own ropes to bind them securely. "We need to get the sheriff," he said. "These two match the description of men wanted for similar robberies in Ogallala." The next hour passed in a blur. The sheriff was summoned, statements were taken, and the would-be robbers were locked away to await trial. Thomas's injuries were minor, requiring only cleaning and cold compresses. By the time everything was settled, it was well past midnight. "You folks have a place to stay tonight?" the sheriff asked. "It's mighty late to be heading home." "Our wagon," Felicity began. "My employer keeps rooms above the general store for the crew," Owen interrupted. "Miss Morgan could take one of those and her brother another. They're simple accommodations, but clean and secure." The sheriff nodded approvingly. "That's kind of you, Hayes. These are good people." "It's no trouble," Owen replied, though his eyes sought Felicity's permission. She nodded gratefully. The thought of driving the wagon home in the dark after all that had happened was unappealing. The rooms above Donovan's general store were indeed simple, each containing a narrow bed, a washstand, and little else, but they were clean and private. Owen showed them up the back stairs, careful to maintain propriety despite the unusual circumstances. "I'll be 2 doors down if you need anything," he told them. "The foreman's quarters." "You're the foreman?" Thomas asked, surprised. A small smile crossed Owen's face. "For this drive, yes. Get some rest, young man. You've had quite an evening." Thomas nodded and disappeared into his room, clearly exhausted from his ordeal. Felicity lingered at her doorway. "Mr. Hayes, Owen, I don't know how to thank you properly. You've been—" She searched for the right word. "Extraordinary." "Any decent man would have done the same," he replied softly. "We both know that's not true." Her eyes held his. "Why were you really at the fair tonight? Surely not just for memories of your mother." Owen's expression grew thoughtful. "Honestly, I was looking for something I couldn't name. Some connection, perhaps, to a world beyond endless trails and cattle." His voice lowered. "I never expected to find it in a woman waiting alone as twilight fell." The sincerity in his words touched something in Felicity that had lain dormant since her father's death, a sense of possibility. "Will you be leaving soon? With your cattle drive?" she asked. "Day after tomorrow," he confirmed. "We've a long journey back to Texas." Disappointment settled in her chest, surprising in its intensity. "Then I'm doubly grateful our paths crossed when they did." "As am I, Miss Morgan." He tipped his hat slightly. "Good night." "Good night, Mr. Hayes." She closed the door softly, leaning against it as unfamiliar emotions swirled within her. Sleep came fitfully, her dreams filled with gunshots, moonlight, and copper-colored eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. Morning brought clarity and fresh challenges. Thomas's face was more severely bruised in daylight, and Felicity's practical nature reasserted itself. They needed to return home to their mother, who would be frantic with worry by now. Owen met them downstairs as they prepared to depart. He'd already arranged for their wagon to be brought around and had purchased supplies to replace what the would-be thieves had damaged. "You needn't have done that," Felicity protested when she saw the fresh provisions. "Consider it trail hospitality," Owen replied. "We look after our own out here." "And are we your own, Mr. Hayes?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider its implications. Something flickered in his eyes, warmth mingled with regret. "In a manner of speaking, perhaps we are." Thomas, oblivious to the undercurrents, was examining the wagon. "Everything seems in order. We should reach home by midday if we leave now." Felicity nodded, though reluctance tugged at her. "Yes, Mother will be worried sick." She turned to Owen. "Will you be in town today? Perhaps we could properly thank you with dinner at our home." "It's not far, just beyond Silver Creek." "I know it," Owen said. "The Morgan homestead has a good reputation. Your father was respected in these parts." Pride warmed her at his words. "Then you'll come," he hesitated. "I have responsibilities with the herd, but—" His expression softened. "Yes, I'll come. Around sundown, we'll expect you," Felicity confirmed, unable to suppress a smile. The journey home was filled with Thomas's elaborate retelling of the previous night's events, each iteration making Owen sound increasingly heroic. Felicity didn't correct her brother's embellishments in truth. Owen Hayes had seemed rather heroic to her as well. Olivia Morgan was indeed beside herself with worry when they arrived, rushing from the house with a speed that belied her 50 years. She embraced them both fiercely before noticing Thomas's bruised face. "What happened?" she demanded, maternal concern shifting swiftly to indignation. Over a simple lunch of bread and stew, they recounted the true version of events. Olivia's face registered shock, fear, and finally deep gratitude. "And this cowboy, this Mr. Hayes, he's coming to dinner," she confirmed. "Yes, Mother. I hope that's acceptable." Felicity tried to keep her tone neutral, though she felt an inexplicable nervousness at the prospect. "Of course it is. The man saved both my children and our livelihood. The least we can do is feed him properly." Olivia was already mentally planning the meal. "Thomas, you'll need to slaughter one of the chickens. And Felicity, we'll use the good tablecloth." The afternoon passed in a flurry of preparation. Felicity found herself taking unusual care with her appearance as evening approached. selecting a blue dress that her father had once said matched her eyes. She pinned her honey-brown hair more carefully than usual, allowing a few soft tendrils to frame her face. "You look lovely," her mother observed when she emerged. "Mr. Hayes will be quite impressed." "Mother, it's not like that," Felicity protested, though her cheeks warmed. "He's leaving tomorrow." Olivia's knowing smile only deepened Felicity's blush. "Many significant journeys begin with a single encounter, my dear." Before Felicity could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Through the window, she saw Owen riding up the path, his tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. He'd changed into clean clothes, she noticed, and had trimmed his beard. Thomas rushed out to greet him, eager to impress the man who'd rescued him. Felicity hung back, suddenly shy despite the connection they'd formed the previous night. Owen handed the reins of his horse to Thomas, then turned toward the house. When his eyes found Felicity in the doorway, something in his expression shifted: surprise, appreciation, and something deeper that made her heart quicken. "Miss Morgan," he greeted her, removing his hat. "Your home is exactly as I imagined it." "Is that a compliment, Mr. Hayes?" she asked, finding her voice. "The highest," he assured her. "It speaks of care, attention, and pride." "Then we thank you," Olivia interjected, appearing beside her daughter. "I'm Olivia Morgan. Welcome to our home, Mr. Hayes. We owe you a debt we can never repay." Owen shook his head. "No debt exists, Mrs. Morgan. I'm just grateful I was in the right place at the right time." Dinner was a pleasant affair. Owen proved to be an engaging guest, sharing stories of cattle drives and life in Texas without boasting or exaggeration. He asked thoughtful questions about their farm and listened with genuine interest to Olivia's explanation of their quilting business. "Felicity has the true gift," Olivia said proudly. "Her stitches are finer than mine ever were, and she has an eye for color that customers specifically request." "Mother exaggerates," Felicity demurred, though pleased by the praise. "I doubt that," Owen replied, his eyes warm on hers. "Some talents cannot be taught, only nurtured." After dinner, Thomas excitedly showed Owen around the property, proudly pointing out the improvements he'd made since becoming the man of the house. Felicity watched from the porch, noting how Owen treated her brother with respect rather than condescension, offering suggestions rather than corrections. When they returned, Thomas was beaming. "Owen thinks we should expand the north field next season," he announced. "He says the soil there would be perfect for wheat." "Does he indeed?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Well, Mr. Hayes seems to know his land as well as his cattle." "Just observations, madam," Owen said modestly. "You have a fine homestead here." As the evening progressed, Felicity found herself increasingly drawn to this man who combined strength with gentleness, confidence with humility. When Owen finally announced that he should return to town, she felt a disproportionate disappointment. "I'll walk you to your horse," she offered, ignoring her mother's knowing glance. The night air was cool, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant coyotes. They walked in companionable silence until they reached his tethered mount. "Thank you for coming," Felicity said softly. "It meant a great deal to all of us." Owen turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "I'm the one who should be thanking you, Miss Morgan. This evening sharing a real home, a family meal it's been." He paused, searching for words. "It's been a reminder of what life can be beyond the trail." "Do you not have a home to return to in Texas?" she ventured. "A small ranch that was my father's," he acknowledged. "But it's been years since it felt like more than a place to rest between drives." Felicity understood the distinction all too well. After her father's death, their farm had nearly lost its soul. Only through determined effort had they reclaimed the sense of home he'd created. Perhaps you need to give it reason to be more, she suggested. Owen's eyes held hers, and for a moment, the space between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Perhaps I do. He reached for her hand, his touch warm and respectful. I ride out tomorrow, but I'll be back this way in the autumn. The railroad at Ogallala is our regular destination. Felicity's pulse quickened. We sell quilts in Ogallala sometimes, for the winter market. A smile spread across his face. Then perhaps our paths will cross again, Miss Morgan. Felicity, she corrected softly. After all we've been through, I think you've earned the right to use my given name. Felicity, he repeated, the name sounding different in his voice. It suits you happiness, good fortune. Will you write? The question surprised even her with its boldness. Owen's smile deepened. If you would welcome letters from a traveling cowboy. I would, she assured him, her certainty growing. Very much. He lifted her hand and with old-world courtesy pressed his lips briefly to her knuckles. Then write I shall, Felicity Morgan, and come autumn I'll look for you by the lemonade stand again. The promise carried her through the lonely weeks that followed. Owen's first letter arrived a month after his departure, the handwriting careful and deliberate. He wrote of the journey back to Texas, of stars that seemed to hang lower in the sky, of a wilderness both beautiful and unforgiving. Between the lines, Felicity read his solitude and his yearning for connection. She replied with stories of the farm, of summer harvests and new quilt designs. Writing to Owen became a cherished ritual, each letter a chance to share thoughts she'd never voiced aloud. With distance as buffer, she found herself revealing the dreams she kept hidden of traveling beyond Nebraska someday, of seeing the ocean, of building a life that honored her parents while still being uniquely her own. Owen's responses were equally candid. He wrote of his hope to make his father's ranch profitable enough to leave the cattle drives behind, of his desire to build something lasting. A man should create more than dust on the trail. He wrote in one letter that Felicity read so often the paper grew soft at the creases. Summer faded into autumn, the prairie landscape turning golden then brown. With the first frost came news that Owen's cattle drive would reach Ogallala by mid-October. The Morgan women immediately began preparing quilts for market, planning to arrive in the railroad town just as the drive concluded. Thomas teased his sister mercilessly about her attention to detail as they loaded the wagon. I don't recall you being so particular about which quilts we brought to market last year, he observed with a grin. The winter market is different, Felicity replied primly, though her cheeks betrayed her. People are looking for specific items. People or one person in particular, Thomas countered, ducking the light swat she aimed at his arm. The journey to Ogallala took 2 days, with an overnight stay at a friendly homestead along the way. Felicity found herself growing increasingly nervous as they approached the bustling railroad town. What if Owen had changed his mind? What if the connection they'd fostered through letters didn't translate to their actual presence? They arrived on a Thursday afternoon, securing a spot in the market square for the following day. After settling into rooms above the mercantile, Felicity found herself drawn to the stockyards on the edge of town where cattle drives typically concluded their journey. The scene was chaotic, hundreds of cattle being counted and loaded onto train cars, cowboys shouting instructions, the air thick with dust and animal sounds. Felicity stood at the periphery, scanning the figures on horseback for a familiar silhouette, looking for someone. A voice asked from behind her. She turned, her heart leaping at the sound she'd carried in her memory for months. Owen stood there, trail-worn but smiling, his copper eyes warm with recognition. Mr. Hayes, she managed, suddenly conscious of how public their meeting was. Miss Morgan, he replied, matching her formality though his eyes conveyed much more. "I was hoping I might find you in town. We arrived today. For the winter market," she explained unnecessarily. He nodded, understanding all she wasn't saying. "My duties here will be complete by tomorrow afternoon. Might I call on you then? Perhaps escort you to dinner?" "I would like that very much," Felicity replied, propriety warring with the desire to reach for his hand. Owen's smile deepened. "Until tomorrow, then." True to his word, Owen appeared at the Morgan's Market stall the following afternoon, freshly bathed and wearing clean clothes that emphasized his broad shoulders. Olivia greeted him warmly before practically shooing the pair away. "Thomas and I can manage perfectly well," she insisted. "You young people enjoy yourselves." The autumn afternoon was crisp and clear, perfect for strolling through the town that had transformed itself from a cattle outpost to a thriving community. Owen offered Felicity his arm, and she took it, aware of curious glances from townspeople who recognized the trail boss and the quilt maker. "Your letters became essential to me," Owen confessed as they walked. "Out on the trail, with nothing but cattle and cowboys for company, your words reminded me of the world I was working toward." Felicity's heart warmed at his admission. "I looked forward to your letters more than I care to admit," she replied. "Mother teases me about watching for the mail rider." Their dinner at the town's best restaurant was a revelation in shared conversation. The connection they'd built through letters deepened with each exchanged glance and shared laugh. Owen spoke of his plans for his ranch, while Felicity described new quilting techniques she hoped to master. "I have something for you," Owen said as they lingered over coffee. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper. "It's not much, but when I saw it, I thought of you." Felicity unwrapped the gift carefully to find a beautiful silver thimble engraved with delicate wildflowers. "Owen, it's exquisite," she breathed, turning it to catch the light. "I know how important your quilting is to you," he explained. "I wanted you to have something that honored your craft." The thoughtfulness of the gift moved her deeply. "Thank you, I'll treasure it." As they walked back toward the mercantile, Owen grew more serious. "Felicity, I need to tell you something about my plans." Her heart faltered. Here it was the goodbye she'd been dreading. "Of course." "This was my last cattle drive," he said, surprising her. "I've saved enough to focus on my ranch full-time." "That's wonderful," she replied, genuine happiness mixing with the realization that his permanent return to Texas would make their connection even more distant. "The thing is," Owen continued, stopping to face her directly, "the ranch needs significant attention if it's to thrive. I'll be tied to it for at least a year, maybe more." Felicity nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "I understand. Your dream deserves your full commitment." "My dream has expanded," he said softly, taking her hands in his. "These past months, writing to you, thinking of you, I've realized that a successful ranch means nothing if I have no one to share it with." Her breath caught as his meaning became clear. "I'm not asking for promises yet," Owen clarified. "That wouldn't be fair to either of us, but I am asking if you might consider visiting Texas in the spring. Stay with my aunt in town, get to know the place, see if it might someday feel like home to you too." The invitation was simultaneously less and more than Felicity had imagined. Not a proposal, but a pathway to a shared future, a chance to know him in his world as he had come to know her in hers. "My mother would need to approve," she said thoughtfully. "And arrangements would need to be made for the farm while I'm away." Hope brightened Owen's expression. "Then you're considering it," Felicity smiled, certainty growing within her. "I'm more than considering it, Owen Hayes. I'm already planning what quilts to bring." His laugh was joyous as he lifted her hands to his lips. You've made me the happiest man in Nebraska territory, Felicity Morgan." "For now," she replied with newfound boldness. "Next spring, we'll see if I can make you the happiest man in Texas." Winter passed in a flurry of correspondence more detailed than before. Owen wrote of repairs to the ranch house, of neighboring families eager to meet the woman who had captured the attention of the confirmed bachelor. Felicity shared her preparations, her mother's cautious blessing and her own growing excitement. By April, arrangements were finalized. Felicity would travel by train to Dallas, where Owen's aunt would meet her. After a week in the city, Owen would escort them both to his ranch 30 miles outside town. She would stay for 1 month, long enough to truly understand the life that might await her. The journey south was Felicity's first significant travel alone. She watched the landscape transform through the train window, prairie giving way to rolling hills and eventually the distinctive terrain of North Texas. Despite her nervousness, excitement dominated her emotions. This wasn't just a visit, it was a glimpse into a possible future. Martha Hayes, Owen's aunt, proved to be a sprightly widow in her 60s with a no-nonsense demeanor and kind eyes that reminded Felicity of her escort. "So you're the young woman who's got my nephew writing letters like a poet," she declared upon meeting Felicity at the station. About time he found someone worth putting thoughts to paper for. The week in Dallas was a whirlwind of new experiences. The city was larger and more sophisticated than Felicity had imagined, with shops and theaters that made Ogallala seem provincial by comparison. Martha proved an enthusiastic guide, introducing Felicity to her social circle while offering quiet insights into the nephew they both cared for. Owen was always different from his cousins, Martha confided one evening as they sat on her veranda. More thoughtful, more determined to forge his own path. His father, my brother, never quite understood him, but he respected Owen's dedication. "He speaks of his father with great respect," Felicity observed. Martha nodded. "James Hayes was a good man, if somewhat traditional in his thinking. He would have approved of you, though a woman who knows her own mind and isn't afraid of hard work." When Owen arrived to escort them to the ranch, Felicity's heart raced at the sight of him. He looked different here in Texas, more settled, perhaps, or simply more himself on his own territory. The way his face lit up when he saw her confirmed that the connection they'd built remained strong. "You look wonderful," he told her as he helped her into the wagon. "Texas agrees with you already." The journey to the Hayes Ranch took most of a day, giving Felicity time to absorb the changing landscape. Owen pointed out landmarks and neighboring properties, clearly proud of this land he called home. When they finally turned down a long drive bordered by oak trees, Felicity caught her first glimpse of what might become her future. The Hayes Ranch house was larger than she'd expected, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and recently painted shutters. Beyond it stood a barn, corrals, and outbuildings that spoke of a working cattle operation. "It's not as established as some," Owen said, watching her reaction carefully, "but it has potential." "It's beautiful," Felicity replied honestly. She could see the care he'd put into the property, the vision taking shape under his stewardship. The month that followed was transformative. Felicity immersed herself in ranch life, learning its rhythms and challenges. She met the small crew Owen employed, the neighboring families who formed the community, and the local merchants who supplied the necessities that couldn't be produced on the ranch. Martha stayed for a week before returning to Dallas, leaving Felicity in the care of the housekeeper, Mrs. Donovan, a widow who had known Owen since childhood. The arrangement preserved propriety while allowing Felicity and Owen time to explore their growing relationship. They rode across the property together, Owen pointing out his plans for expansion. They shared meals on the porch, watching sunsets paint the Texas sky in colors Felicity had never seen in Nebraska. In the evenings, they sat before the fire, reading aloud from favorite books or simply talking about their hopes for the future. "I've been thinking about the North Pasture," Owen said one evening as they sat side by side on the porch swing. "The soil there would be perfect for growing cotton. It would diversify the ranch's income." "Smart thinking," Felicity agreed. "My father always said not to rely on a single crop or product. That's why we added the quilting business to our farm income." Owen's hand found hers in the gathering darkness. "Speaking of quilting, I had a thought. The nearest town lacks a proper dry goods store. People travel 20 miles for quality fabric and notions." Felicity raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting a business opportunity, Mr. Hayes?" "Perhaps," he admitted with a smile. "Or perhaps I'm simply noting that a talented quilt maker might find a ready market here, should she ever decide to relocate." The implication hung between them, full of promise. As her visit progressed, Felicity found herself increasingly able to envision a life here not just as Owen's wife, but as a woman with her own place in this community, her own contributions to make. On her final weekend in Texas, Owen organized a small gathering at the ranch. Neighbors and friends came to meet the woman from Nebraska who had captured their friends' attention. Felicity found herself welcomed with genuine warmth, particularly by the women who appreciated her quilting skills and fresh perspectives. "You've made quite an impression," Owen observed as they stood together, watching their guests enjoy the barbecue his ranch hands had prepared. "As has Texas," Felicity replied truthfully. "It's different from home in many ways, but I can see why you love it." Owen's expression grew serious. "And could you love it too, Felicity? Could you see yourself building a life here?" The question they'd been circling for weeks now lay directly before them. Felicity took a deep breath, knowing her answer would change everything. "I already do love parts of it," she said carefully. "This land, these people, the possibilities I see here." She met his gaze directly. "Most of all, I love seeing you in your element, Owen. You belong here in a way that makes me want to belong here too." Joy transformed his features. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that I'd like to return properly this time, not as a visitor, but as someone with a future here." She squeezed his hand. "With you, if that's what you're offering." Owen led her away from the gathering to a quiet spot beneath the ancient oak that dominated the front yard. There, with the Texas sunset painting the sky in brilliant hues, he dropped to one knee. "Felicity Morgan, from the moment I saw you waiting alone at that fair, something in me recognized something in you. These months apart only confirmed what my heart already knew." He produced a small box from his pocket. "I'm asking if you'll make this ranch a home with me, if you'll build a life here as my wife, my partner, and my dearest love." The ring inside was perfect, a modest diamond flanked by 2 sapphires that matched her eyes. Tears blurred Felicity's vision as she nodded, words momentarily beyond her. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, Owen Hayes, I will." Their wedding took place the following spring, time to allow Felicity's mother and brother to make the journey to Texas. The ceremony was held on the ranch, beneath the same oak tree where Owen had proposed. Neighbors from miles around attended, along with Owen's cattle drive companions and Felicity's Nebraska friends who could manage the trip. Olivia Morgan wept openly as she watched her daughter pledge herself to the man who had once offered a simple escort home and ended up offering a lifetime together. Thomas stood proudly as his sister's witness, his boyish features having matured in the year since their fateful fair adventure. The Hayes Ranch thrived under their joint stewardship. Owen's cattle operation expanded, while Felicity established a successful quilting business that grew to include a small dry goods store in the nearby town. They worked side by side, their complementary strengths creating a partnership that was the envy of neighboring ranches. 2 years after their wedding, their first child arrived, a daughter they named Emma Olivia, who inherited her father's copper eyes and her mother's determined spirit. A son followed 3 years later, James Thomas, whose arrival completed their family on summer evenings when the Texas heat finally relented. They would often sit on the porch swing, watching their children play beneath the oak tree. Sometimes Felicity would work on a quilt while Owen read aloud, their domestic tranquility a far cry from their dramatic first meeting. "You ever miss Nebraska?" Owen asked her once. During their 5th year of marriage, Felicity considered the question thoughtfully. "I miss aspects of it, the particular quality of light across the prairie, my mother's kitchen, the familiarity of having grown up somewhere. But I don't regret the choice to build our life here." Owen's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I think often of that night at the fair, how close I came to not approaching you, to riding away the next morning without looking back." "Yet you did approach me," Felicity reminded him. "And you did look back." "Best decisions of my life," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. As twilight deepened into night, Felicity leaned into her husband's embrace, gratitude filling her heart. What had begun as a simple offer, "Need someone to walk you home," had led to a journey neither of them could have anticipated. The path hadn't always been smooth, but together they had created something beautiful. A home, a family, a shared purpose that sustained them through all of life's challenges. Years later, when their children were grown and the ranch had become one of the most respected in the county, Felicity and Owen would sometimes attend the county fair together. They would linger as the crowds thinned and twilight fell, remembering that first fateful meeting. "Would you like someone to walk you home, Mrs. Hayes?" Owen would ask, his hair now silver but his eyes still bright with love. "Always, Mr. Hayes," Felicity would reply, taking his arm. "Always." And they would walk together, their steps matched after decades of partnership, toward the home they had built with love, determination, and the courage to trust a stranger on a star-filled Nebraska night.